All right, class. My name is Mr. Seeley, and this is programming in Java, or not Java, Python. Sorry, those were the old classes, the Java classes. I'm going to start showing you. This is the first video on displaying information. Okay, and there's a lot of ways to do this, and so I'm going to go through as many different ways as possible right now, so I can get you through this first unit. So there was a video on downloading the Anaconda Navigator. So go ahead and make sure that you've downloaded that already or watched that video in Module 1. Once Anaconda is downloaded, you should just be able to open it up like any other application. And then we'll open up our launch, our Jupyter Notebook. And this is where this is going to be our programming environment, unless I find a different, IDE that I like. So anyway, I'm saving everything to my desktop. So I'm going to go in my desktop, and you guys can put new folders in. I mean, this isn't that difficult to figure out so far. So. And then on my desktop, I created a Python projects folder. So just say new Python 3, and I'm going to call this project Module 1 displaying information. Whoops, wrong spot. Okay. All right, so everybody's first program when they program in whatever language they're in is hello world. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and hello world displays. Now, if you're familiar with C++ or Java or other languages, this would be considered a statement, so you'd have a semicolon there. Well, Python is nice. They have really cleaned up a lot of the syntax so that you guys aren't having to fight and worry about syntax problems, and you can worry more about just learning how to program. Okay, so single quotes and double quotes don't matter because in Python or in like C++ or Java, single quotes are for character data types, which don't even exist in Python. If you put something in a single quote or a double quote, it's just a string. Now, a string can hold any information. You could write a whole book and store it in a string. Strings can hold numbers, they can hold letters, they can hold symbols, whatever you want. So this is our first program in Python. Okay, it's just a simple print statement. Okay, now what's nice too about this is that you could do stuff like 3 and run it. You don't even need to have the print statement there, even though that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so you could print 3. Now 3 is it's an integer. It's a whole number. 3.5. It's not a whole number. It is in Python, it's called a floating point number. Okay, and again, you're familiar with the string because that was hello world. Okay, so maybe you're interested in figuring out the type of each of these. So you could say int 3 and run it. Okay. No, sorry, not int 3, type 3. Okay, that's going to return the data type, which is an int. And then if I did my 3.5 and ran it, that's going to give me a float. And then if I did, hello world, that's going to give me my string, str. Okay. Python abbreviates the string to str. All right. So maybe we want to learn about our arithmetic operators. So we could do something like 3 plus 2. Now this is the addition arithmetic operator. It's going to return 5, all right? And I could do the same thing, 3.5, and it gives us 5.5, okay? We could do, multiplication here, okay, and run that. It's going to give us 6. Now watch what happens if I put 3.0. It's going to give me 6.0. So that's going to turn this into a float. And so it's nice that it's smart enough to know how to do that for you, okay? What else could we do? We could do division, okay? Gives us 1.5. Let's see what this does. Ooh, gives us 1. Okay, so maybe you don't want that 0.5 there. Now, in C++ and Java, again, if you just had that, it knows it's an int and an int, and it would divide it out, and it would just give you 1. But Python kind of goes, yeah, most people want the 1.5 to display. But, if you don't want it, you could have 2 divisions right there, and you could run it, and it would display just 1. Okay. Now, you might want to concatenate information together. So like we have pi, which is equal to 3.14, right? And if I run this, okay, again, we've got issues. Java would handle that perfectly. Python does not like that. You have to convert this to a string and run it. And I need another... see, I've got an opening brace right here. I've got to close it, opening parentheses here. I've got to close it here, or I get unexpected end of file while parsing. So that takes care of that. So that's one way you could do it. Another way you could do it is you could turn 3.14 into a string and run it. Okay, does that. Or what you could do, and I found this to be pretty cool, is you can have your string right here and then 3.14, and you could run that, and it brings that up, okay? Maybe you want to format your information. So let's just say I had a letter A, and I wanted to put B and C in. Okay, I could run this and be ABC. But let's say I wanted to put a tab in between. Whoops. Let's say I wanted to put a tab in between A, B, and C and run it. Okay, there's my tab. And so, maybe if you're working on reports or something where you have to have a header with multiple columns in that header, and then for each row of your report, those columns would all have to match up with the header columns. You might want to do something like this. You could put 2 tabs in. Okay, spread it out. Okay. Maybe you'd want to put information on a separate line. Okay, so you could run that. A, B, and C. Okay. Let's see here. It's possible. You're wanting to format your information so you could have 9, comma, plus, comma, 9, comma, equals, comma, 9 plus 9. Okay? If I run that, let's see what I get. 9 plus 9 equals 18. Okay? So the commas in between here, this is just a nice way that Python is able to format your data properly. A couple things you could do. Let's see here. 1, comma, 2, comma, 3, comma, 4, comma, and I want to separate all this by commas. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe I want dash T as well. Okay. So it's going to print out all your information and separate it by a comma. Maybe you don't want it by a comma. Maybe you want a pipe in there. Okay. Let's see here. What else is kind of you might need for this chapter? That's basically how you're going to print all your information up. I'm going to show you more throughout the book, but this is pretty good so far. So I think what we'll do, let's see here. Exercise 1. Is a good idea to read this book in front of a computer so you can try out the examples as you go. Whenever you are experimenting with a new feature, you should try to make mistakes. For example, in Hello World program, what happens if you leave out one of the quotation marks? Well, let's try that real quick. So, Hello World. And I run it. Okay. So if you open a quote, you got to close the quote. Same thing with if you had a single comma. Okay? Or not comma, single quote. So let's see what else it says down here. What happens if you leave out one of the quotations? What happens if you leave out both? Okay, let's leave out both. Okay, can't do that. Doesn't like it. It's going, hey, you're trying to display basically variables, and you're not concatenating them together right, and so if you're wanting to display that, you got to display it as a string. Okay. In a print statement, what happens if you leave out one of the parentheses? Okay. Well, I already showed you if we leave out one of the parentheses. If you open a parentheses, you got to close it. If you are trying to print a string, what happens if you leave out one of the okay, we just went through that. You can use a minus sign to make a number negative, like -2. What happens if you put a plus symbol before a number? What about 2 plus 2? Okay, so let's try this real quick. Plus 2, it's just going to be 2, I believe. Yep, doesn't do anything. 2 plus 2, it just adds them together. It's smart enough to know. Let's see here. In math notation, leading zeros are okay is 0, 2. What happens if you try to do this in Python? It's not going to like that, I don't think. See, 2, 0 is fine because that's just the number 20, but 0, 2 is going to have issues. Yep, it's because you're trying to 0, 2 isn't a number, 2 is a number, and that's because if you recall from your first lesson on the way that the binary number system works, there isn't a number 0, 2, it's just 2. Okay? What happens if you have two values with no operator between them? So that'd be the same thing basically. There's two values, no operator between them. Do something like that, same kind of thing. Okay. Next, let's see here. Start the Python interpreter and use it as a calculator. How many seconds are there in 42 minutes, 42 seconds? So there's a couple ways to go about this. So you could say there's 42 minutes times 60 seconds plus 42 seconds, and that should give you the amount of seconds in that 42 minutes and 42 seconds, okay? Now, this is getting a little bit ahead, but we're going to basically get into variables so that I don't have to write this out a bunch. But I could say this, we could just say this is our time. Okay, so now time is assigned to this value, and if I ran and printed time, okay, it's going to give me the 2562. Okay, so and that makes sense. So that is one. How many seconds are in 42 minutes and 42 seconds? How many miles are there in 10 kilometers? Hint, there are 1.61 kilometers in a mile. So see here, kilometers, 10 kilometers. So it's 10 kilometers, so I want to know miles. So I could say, what, 10 divided by 1.61, and then print my miles. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say time, and I'll say miles, and run that. So 6.2, so there's 6.21118 miles in a kilometer, in 10 kilometers. Okay, now some of this is, you know, you're gonna have to understand basic algebra for this class to be able to run some of this. So hopefully this is more of a you know, when you're programming, it's more of a programming experience instead of, you know, like really high level math. But you might, you know, I tend to find people who are good at math tend to be pretty good at programming. So so that's part B. If you run a 10-kilometer race in 42 minutes and 42 seconds, what is your average pace? They want time per mile in minutes, and so miles per minutes and miles per second. Okay, and then average speed, or what is your average speed? Let's see here. So we've got, if we did, let's see here, miles per second would equal the, what, miles divided by the number of seconds, so divided by time. And then, so then we could say print miles per second, comma, miles per second, and run that. Okay, so that's how many miles you were running per second. And then if you wanted to figure out the number of miles per minute, that would equal, well, we would want total minutes first, right? Total minutes, and that would equal 42 minutes plus 42 divided by 60, because you did 42 seconds. So then you would do your miles divided by total minutes. I think that's right. So then we print, let's see here, miles per minute. Miles per minute. So you were running 0.145, and then the last one would just be miles per hour, right? So miles per hour would whoops. Now you can't do that. You can't have two separate variables. They have to be one. Miles per hour would equal miles per minute, how much you ran per minute, times 60, right? Because you'd be running 60 minutes. So if you print this, you would get miles per hour, miles per hour. And so if you are running at this pace, then you would eventually run 8.72 miles. Okay, so go ahead and play with this. You're going to have exercises that you're going to have to do, but this should give you a good idea on how to print information up.